Jeff York, it's Wednesday night. It's live stream time, and you have no other choice but to join me here for this discussion of Park Chan-wook's latest film. How you doing, sir?
Good, nor would I want any other choice this evening. This is going to be a fun discussion.
It is. I was very surprised by this movie. Now, granted, I don't think I watched a trailer. I think I read a synopsis of it, and it's basically about a guy who loses his job. He's unemployed for a year or more, and decides that the best way to go about getting a new job is to take out the competition, literally.
Yes.
Now,
Yes. Suffice it to say, it's a black comedy.
it's a very black comedy,
Yeah.
and it's strange because given my current situation, having been myself out of work for 8 months now, I was not laughing so much as I had expected during a dark comedy. I was mostly enveloped in the darkness, and I would like to say the honesty of this film. I was very surprised by how well this movie captured not only the intense, kind of wacky and bloody situations that this character puts himself into and finds himself in, but also the more the subtler details about what it is like in this day and age to find yourself middle-aged and suddenly unemployed after spending, decades in an industry and kind of thinking, well, I've got it made. I'm gonna go take the family on this vacation, and the gravy train's never gonna stop, but sometimes it does. And the things you have to do, not only going to these extremes, but you have to make some hard choices.
Well, it's funny. It couldn't be a more timely film for all those kinds of reasons that so many people are dealing with today, let alone the fact that for 20 years now, companies have been downsizing, not adapting to some of the modernity of the world, or the modernity of the world has been eating them up without any sort of sympathy or chance to even give them a shot at sort of joining this brave new world. And I think what makes this film extraordinary is not only how well it's done as a black comedy. I mean, they go into some very dark places, and they pull them off very well. And we would expect that of the director of Old Boy and some other things that he's done that have a certain amount of darkness to them. But I'm also impressed so much that this film does manage to do all of its craziness grounded with the reality of these very real situations, these very real emotions, and this really, sort of empathy on part of the filmmakers to say that this is tough and this is not just to be laughed at, but these are good people in terrible situations surrounded by bad circumstances that are really no fault of their own, and given very little sort of leverage or movability to wiggle around and try to get out of. And so it leads to some extreme measures, as it does in this film, and maybe for some other people, whether that's them working at a Walmart or going back to some sort of service industry thing just to make ends meet for a while, or as this guy does, taking events into his own hands, which become homicidal. I think it's a very serious topic in a way, even though it's treated as a very, very witty and funny film.
Yeah, I mean, Lee Byung-hun plays Man-soo. He's our man at the center of this story, and he works at a paper plant in South Korea, and he's worked there for a quarter century. And as it opens, he's sort of a plant supervisor, and he's talking to and we're going to get into some spoilers here, folks, so please heed the banner.
We're talking spoilers, yes.
Yes, but or if you're on the vertical presentation on YouTube, the banner's up here. It's a brave new world indeed of formats.
Yes.
So I would say he's giving kind of a speech to a number of his co-workers and possibly even the people who report to him about what management has asked him to do, which is basically provide names of people that can be cut. And he's getting all indignant in this speech, and he even goes to confront the new American plant owners who have come to inspect the place. And he's the one guy brushes him off. It's the thesis statement and the title of the film. As he's getting into his black SUV to drive away to some luncheon, probably he says, "Oh, we had no other choice but to cut a whole bunch of jobs." And so, Mansu goes home, and he's got a wife who's got tennis lessons. He's got a very gifted daughter who plays the cello, and they're informed shortly thereafter that the teacher says, "Oh, I can't teach your daughter anymore. She's too gifted. We have to send her to a more expensive instructor, and she needs, by the way, a $50,000 cello." Yeah,
even if it's beautiful music.
right. And a son he's just kind of in school, but likes to play video games and watch things. He loves streaming. They have to cut out Netflix, which is a nice little fun touch. They make good use of the ba-boom kind of
get
sound.
some good laughs in the film.
Right. But it just goes to show they're not a wealthy family, and they're not poor. They are perfectly comfortably, I'd say, upper middle class. And over the course of this year, they gradually have to make harder and harder decisions, to the point where they're getting down to almost no extravagances. The groceries are being cut. They're having like cabbage soup without meat in it, because having something is, I'm not going to call it base, because I don't know the culture that well, but it just seems like cabbage soup with a bit of meat, it shouldn't be a luxury. It should be something that's just like mac and cheese here. But yeah. One day, Mansu was following a person who he was in line with at a former job interview, and he just kind of goes out of his head, and he tracks the guy down. He goes up to a rooftop, and he's raising a giant potted plant full of red chili peppers over his head, and he's going to drop it on him, kind of like Roadrunner style. And he gets caught by the old lady whose apartment terrace he is standing on. And he realizes, well, I can't just kill this person, at least not here in broad daylight. And he looks out over this city, and he's looking at the various kind of high rises and smokestacks of the various paper companies that are all around this, the sky, dotting the skyline. And he thinks, you know what? There's something here. I'm not going to kill this guy in broad daylight, but what if I made a list of the people who are my top competition and just take them out? So I'll be the number one guy in the city for whatever job comes up. And he does that. He sets up a kind of a shell company and sends out feelers for people for this amazing position. And he gets resumes, and then he starts making his sort of kill list, and he arranges them in priority order in terms of qualifications. There's a funny scene where he's kind of shuffling papers back and forth, like, oh, this guy's better at this than I am, or maybe I'm better at this than he is, and where does that stand compared to this guy? It's kind of an ingenious plan, but along the way, we see that he doesn't suddenly become a criminal mastermind. He's just a plant manager at a paper company who gets an idea in his head. And so a lot of his schemes are kind of half-baked, not well thought through. Some of them go well, some of them go disastrously horrible. But what I liked about the movie throughout is it approaches cartooniness in some of the situations he finds himself in, but I always believed in Mansu as a real person.
Yeah, there's a few elements of it that I think you're right, go up to the edge of maybe being ridiculous, too much, a little bit farcical, maybe almost becoming a Blake Edwards sort of venture. But the director and the screenwriting, and I dare say the performance, I think, pull it back and keeping it a little bit more grounded. It doesn't quite go there, even though, it is asking us to sort of empathize and sort of cheer on a man who's really doing some terrible things in this. But what I love about it is we can cheer him on a little bit easier because he is so sort of naive about all this. He doesn't understand really what's involved and the planning and other people's reactions. He doesn't understand about, well, have you planned for in case this goes wrong, or there's somebody else at home, or the lights come on, or whatever. And it's very funny because he's just completely stymied by all of this. And so that's where I think a lot of the humor comes in, because he ends up almost feeling like a Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin sort, who's in way over his head and he's falling all over himself. And this actor is very good. I mean, he's an accomplished actor, but seeing him pull off the sort of serious, straight businessman stuff, and the honor and the sort of Asian sort of male kind of cliches, but then he's tripping all over himself and getting messy and panicking and not sure what to do. But the other thing that's great about this movie, and you sort of alluded to it, is it keeps reminding us of the other characters in the story. His wife is very prominent here. His two dogs are prominent. They have two dogs that at one point the wife says, "We have too many mouths to feed. We can't afford to feed them all." And the first thing the husband thinks is like, "Are we going to get rid of one of our kids?" Because again, he's kind of naive. But then she's like, "No, the beloved dogs." And the beloved dogs are the only kind of connection that this sort of autistic prodigy girl, child who plays the cello has, and they're her beloved pets. But thankfully, the wife is smart. She gives the pets to her parents to take care of while the time being is. But, now they've got a problem with the child who feels alienated and not connected to anybody. But, all these kind of things keep happening, and it affects the other characters, and we see how they're dealing with it. The wife character is very funny. She takes a dental hygienist job for this very sort of suave and debonair younger doctor. And of course, Man-soo gets jealous of that because he wouldn't be, a husband in a movie if he wasn't jealous of somehow the wife, finding a man who is employed and making a very good living and possibly, providing the contrast to him. Every man fears sort of being outdone by somebody else for all reasons that he can't compete with, and here Man-soo very much has those reasons. So I love the fact that, in addition to the comedy and the craziness, it grounds it with showing us that this criminal is not really a bad guy. He's not really to the manner born, and his actions, as well as his firing or being laid off and all the other problems economically, are affecting other people too. Also the families and the people who are associated with those he's trying to off. We get to know a little bit about their lives and sort of their struggles and everything too. So, the whole thing kind of unravels, but it's not just a one-sided thing. There's dimension to it, and I think a great deal of depth. And I think that always makes comedies better. When it's just too one note, like, okay, they're just running to get the money under the big W, and it's a mad, 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 mad world. We wouldn't watch that for 3 hours if we didn't realize that, okay, the couple that we think is solvent and nice, played by Sid Caesar and Edie Adams, are that close to being at each other's throats because they really haven't ever dealt with any real challenges, and they're not a real a couple filled with depth. Or the fact that the nagging mother-in-law is so bad that she ends up getting tossed out of the car, and then she's kind of on her own for a while. Similar things here where they just adding these layers and nuances and depth to it that by the end, it's like, even if you explain it very well, and if you had to explain all of what goes on to it, it's an elaborate story.
It is. And what I love about this, and I hate to bring this up, but it's kind of in the news lately. A lot of the awards nominations are coming out, and I'm so tired of seeing one battle after another on all of those lists, because I've been doing a lot of award season catch-up viewing lately, and every movie I watch is 10 times the movie that film is. Just in terms of layering and story and what it gets right about people. And in this movie, which is a dark comedy and could be seen as, on the surface as kind of farcical if you just step back and like, oh, there's this crazy scene where Man-soo is struggling with the first person he wants to kill, but the guy's wife comes in, and there's loud music playing to cover up the gunfire, and they're all shouting, and there's a scramble for the gun, and there's affairs and all that stuff. That's like a symphony of outrageousness, but it still feels very real. But what it also does in the case of each of Man-soo's victims or potential victims is it shows us how he, in his plotting, becomes like the very corporation that got rid of him. He doesn't see them as people. They're just faces on a resume that he's trying to see, can I use this person to my advantage? And if the answer is no, they've got to go. But he gets into each one of their lives and finds out, oh, this person has a family, or this guy, the last victim, who coincidentally turns up to be the first person he almost dropped the pod on. He's like this kind of suave, debonair, doesn't care about anything, party guy, loves to drink, and he wears high fashion and everything. Turns out he's got, marital problems. He's miserable in his job. He's, a raging alcoholic, and he doesn't have it all together. He's got the life that Man-soo wants, and possibly even had, just this idea of like a disposable life, one that everything is taken care of and provided for. I sell my soul to work at this job and get the benefits and everything, but what have I actually done with it? At the end of the film, Man-soo is in the position of appreciating all of that from a perspective he's probably never had before, and he's looking at a guy he's looking at a guy across from him who he thinks had that attitude as well. Maybe the guy does, maybe he doesn't, but he's seeing him as a well-rounded human being who nonetheless has to die.
Yep. Well, it's funny. I mean, it's your very point. A couple of points that you made, which are very solvent and smart. You know, he's almost taking it as you know, this sort of emotionless, bloodless. I have to do it for my family. It's that kind of thing, without realizing that he's going to affect other people. He's going to affect other families and ruin them as he feels ruined. So, you know, there's a place where he's sort of naive about it too, because he doesn't understand that in addition to his hurt, there are other people hurting too. These people are looking for work too, or want work as well that he's going to take out. He's taking out better candidates so he can rise above and be considered the most qualified of, which at the core of it is like, well, they're out of work too, you know, and he's not even seeing them that way. So there's that level. There's also, I think, you know, you always criticize and think everybody's got it so much better than you, or why do they have this, or why wasn't I given that? And I know there's that in everybody's life, and we can't help but do it, and it's natural and it's forgivable. However, it is always sort of a misguiding kind of anger, because we don't know what other people go through. People we think are perfectly happy and have a career and money and all that, and grant you, they don't have to worry about some of the basics that so many people now are having to worry about, but they have their own problems that maybe you wouldn't want to trade in, even if you could say, hey, I've got a job, but I have a wife who doesn't love me, or a family's at the problem, or I'm spending all my money salvaging my kid who's a drug addict, or God knows what else there could be. Then most of us will never know about people's lives, taking care of a sick parent or whatever else, those kind of things that come up, etc. Finally, just in regards to the awards and One Battle After Another. One Battle After Another certainly gotten its due of praise, including you know, not only the writing and the acting, but the editing and the score and the cinematography and all these. And you know, everybody's talking about the roller coaster sort of almost treatment of the chase at the end, where
the Audi cars, commercial,
the three cars are chasing after each other, which is very witty, and you don't see what's coming necessarily, and you're kind of forced to guess or wonder how badly it's going to be once the inevitable seems that you've put together the drivers in the chase scene haven't. But almost every scene in this film is shot so well by Kim Woo-young, who's the cinematographer, and whether it's a point of view shot of a person talking in it, or some of the action, or even just where people are positioned for the choreography of a scene, it's really well thought out. And there's one scene, to the one where you mentioned, where he's going to kill this one guy whose wife is having an affair, and you know, he's trying to kill him so he doesn't have to kill the wife when she goes in and sees that, you know, when he sees that she's screwing somebody else. But after all this drama that you said with the gun and the noise and the shooting and the screaming, there's one scene where he finally gets out of there, stumbling down the hill, tripping all over himself, getting all messy. He's in these, you know, rubber pants and everything else, trying to make sure he doesn't get covered in gook and blood, and he gets covered in gook anyway. And then there's this great shot. It's at the bottom of this hill, and we see him coming down this pathway to try to then turn around here. It's all in the camera, one shot. And here sits his car waiting for him to get away. And he's about, I don't know, maybe 50 feet or whatever it is in front of her, chasing him. And the camera just sits there and lets their physical choreography and their relationship with each other and how close it is play out as tension. And it's brilliant. 99 out of 100 directors would have shot the hell out of that. Think about how, you know, they put these things on YouTube about how, you know, Taken covers for Liam Neeson being 60 and not being able to run so well. Well, he does very well in Taken. It's a great, fun, you know, crazy action picture. But there's one scene where he has to go over a fence, and it shows like it took 8 cuts for him to do that, where say that we've gone over that in one leap, man. And but here it's like the camera's just sitting down there, and we're seeing this. Good. And then, you know, she's coming after him, and it's hilarious, and it works just as well as the quick cuts or the camera tricks that PTA is using to sort of deceive the drivers and give us a sense of how deceived they are. And it's wonderful. I mean, there's so many shots in this that I thought if you were picking like the 20 best shots of this, you'd have to take it from 150 shots. That would be very hard to, you know, sort of determine what are the best shots, because it's just so smart and everything is really considered. But all of it is considered. The script is not I imagine they did second or third passes on saying, what else can we add to this to make this complicated? Oh, okay, so they're robbing these, the kid is robbing these cell phones to make money and reselling them. How are they going to get him out of that when he's caught? Oh, the man who's got the store that's selling the cell phones is having his own affair. So they're going to have sort of a blackmail thing there. It's like they're all sort of bad. They're all in the take. They're all making as much as they can out of these terrible circumstances, and sort of coming up with it on the fly, but becoming sort of worse and worse people as it goes on. But just the way it's put together, that was one of the things that impressed me most too, because it's like people do not know how to shoot comedies very well today. You see so many comedies and they look like sitcoms, or they look like every Universal rom-com starring Matthew McConaughey and Kate Hudson from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever it is now. And this one has a real point of view. It looks, very, there's a warmth to it. There's a sheen to it. It reminds me of like Blake Edwards and Wes Anderson, though not as mannered as Wes Anderson, but like they have decided to make the visuals work in the behest of the comedy and the tension. And it's not just, we'll just shoot this and then the actor being funny within the frame. That's all we have to worry about. No, it's like it's going to make the actor funnier by how he's framed. What is his context in the scene? How close is he to the antagonist? How close is he to the danger? It's one of those movies you could watch 5 times and not see enough.
Well, and I love that you brought up that particular chase through the forest, because something it reminded me of is the famous shot from John Carpenter's Halloween, where Jamie Lee Curtis is running to the house and she's banging on the door so the kids will let her in, and you see Michael Myers from across the street just like walking, and it holds on him as he's getting closer and closer and closer, and you feel like you are at the door waiting to get let in. It's the same thing, and it's that great juxtaposition of horror and comedy. They can both work very effectively well, because I didn't know, like a lot of the scenes in this movie, I didn't know exactly which way it was going to go. I figured, film critic brain, there's a couple of different ways you can play it, but I honestly couldn't count on, oh, he's going to make it, or she's going to trip and he's going to drive off. It's a great kind of parked car in the woods scene, which we had also in Companion earlier this year, a movie that's been left off all of the awards, and that's a crime. But you mentioned that there are no real good characters in this movie. I mean, a lot of great characters, not a lot of good people, or at least complicated people. I think Miri, who's Mansu's wife, again played by Sun Yoo-jin.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
I think she's probably the closest we get to an uncompromised character. I mean, she has to make compromises in terms of her lifestyle with the kids and everything, but she's very understanding with her husband. She's patient, but she also knows when to nudge him and kind of like slap him back to reality. Like she gives him a list at the dinner table, like, yep, here's everything that needs to go, beginning with Netflix. I think the closest she comes to having to, and keep me honest here, because it's been 25 hours since we watched this movie, so I don't remember all the details, because it's 2.5 hours long and a lot happens. I think the closest she comes to doing something possibly necessary but unethical maybe is when she begins to proposition the cell phone store owner, saying, hey, we'll make this, if you make this go away, I'll sleep with you. And she is very clever. She doesn't actually proposition him yet. She doesn't quite get a chance to, because her husband, Mansu, butts in and has his own ideas. But we see her in the bathroom and she's like taking off her bra from underneath her shirt, and like, what is she? I don't know what she's doing here. And then the next scene, she goes and confronts this guy, and she has her coat like up around her chest, and then she kind of like, I can't remember, she flings it over her shoulder or brings it down or something. You can clearly see what's going on underneath that sweater, and it's like, wow. Other movies, to your point, there are lesser filmmakers who would have just made that the next kind of plot device of like, okay, now they're going to have an affair, but something's going to go wrong. But no, Mansu steps in and he kind of mans up and says, here's why you're going to let our son off scot-free. And it's kind of touching and also really messed up too.
Right. I think the closest Miri comes to, probably because she's sort of saved in that, maybe comes to, for lack of a better term, unethical behavior, is when she finds out what he's doing with the buried body and she chooses not to expose that, where she kind of understands, okay, it's this point now, but if I make the ethical claim or charge about this, but she kind of does some sort of, loyalty lies about it. But the thing that your point I loved about her character, though, and you're sort of brushing up on it with your argument, is she's not a bad person. She's not a nag. She's not somebody who's being, like, it would be so easy to just turn her into a pain in the ass, and maybe he kills her as part of the black comedy.
Oh, yeah.
That's the last person that he gets rid of. Or maybe she's the trial run because she's such a nag. You think about like Caller Billy and Creep Show, where you're just waiting for Adrienne Bobo to get killed because she's such a nag. And it seems like, okay, I guess I'm as bad as Hal Holbrook because I want her dead. And finally she is killed. But here, she's not bad. And even when he's thinking that she's having an affair with the dentist because she goes to this costume party, that when he gets screwed up in the woods with the car and the first death, it doesn't go good, he comes back and remembers, oh, shoot, that's right, I've got to go to this party. He comes there and he's dressed as what looks like almost Napoleon, but she's dressed as Pocahontas. And then, of course, her boss, the sexy younger doctor dentist, is dressed as sort of an Indian chief. And he's like, well, see, look, we're meant to be. And she starts dancing with him. And, she's subject to his affections or attention because her husband isn't there, and she's embarrassed and wondering why he's being a crappy husband. But when he does show up and they kind of have a confrontation about it and they go home and continue the confrontation about it, she's not this, shrew about it. There's no taming of her. She's like understanding. She explains it. He apologizes. He feels bad. And they even end up making love and feeling close to each other. So it's so nice to see that, she's treated as this person who really is invested in her husband. But these trying times are indeed trying their marriage too, but she's not willing to throw it all away and say, well, if you can't support me and everything is going bad and you can't even make this party, I guess I have no choice but to sleep with my dentist or to kick you out onto the couch tonight. That doesn't happen. So suddenly you're not only rooting for Mansu, but you're rooting for his wife because she's worth saving. His family is worth saving. And maybe, we sit there, as terrible as some of his choices are, he's doing it for good investments, if you will.
Well, and you bring up a great point, is again this movie demands to be rewatched because of all the seeds that are planted and the kind of the clues as to where things might go throughout. And it starts in the opening scene where they're kind of having a backyard barbecue. The company has sent them, this nice, like these eel steaks or whatever, and they're kind of grilling them and making a big deal out of it. And they're
lots is made about barbecue in this movie, but go ahead.
Right. but Mansu and Miri are kind of dancing in the backyard and the kids are rolling their eyes, and but you can see that they're very much in love. I think if the film were going to go in the direction that you were hinting at, which I think, now that I think of it, yes, I've seen 100 movies where they set the wife up as being someone who the audience wants to see, get killed. They have a very loving relationship that's put to several different kinds of tests in this movie. So towards the end, when she realizes what her husband has done, even though it's, quite horrific, you don't get the sense that she's going to turn him in. It doesn't feel like it's that kind of a movie. And one of the things I love about this film, I'm still kind of wrestling with it, is I like to think that I have sort of a moral code. And I know that gets me into some trouble when I'm talking about movies because people think I'm too much of a prude or something. But yeah, I believe in justice. The family gets away with it, despite the best efforts of a couple of detectives who, again, they're not shown as like bumbling detectives who can't figure something out. That it's just that sort of fate and the accidental. None of these people are geniuses who are committing these crimes or the cover-ups. It's just that by sheer coincidence, their own lies and sometimes their mistakes bump up against each other to create the perfect crime. Cops are doing their best, but at the end of this film, Mansu, Miri, nobody gets caught. They all get away with it. My quandary is the middle victim, because there's only 3, I think, men who get killed in terms of Mansu's competition. The middle guy is the one person who I think could be said is completely blameless.
Yeah.
He's not shown to have any vices. He gets the least screen time of any of the 3. So we don't know if he's got any skeletons in his closet, but he was kind of an executive at a paper company or a manager, just like Mansu was. And now he's working as a shoe store, in a shoe store. And it's so, talk about Blake Snyder's Save the Cat. I mean, essentially the establishing shot of this guy is he's in the shoe store. Man-Soo is in there in kind of a disguise, kind of casing the joint, trying to figure out what his move is going to be. The shoe salesman is trying to sell a pair of shoes to this customer who he's like, well, do you have a pair of these? And he's like, yeah, I'll go get some in the back. I'll get your size and maybe some options. And then while he's in the back room, the customer just like kind of sticks up his nose and strolls out the door. And then the dude comes from out of the back and he's like, did he leave? Could I help you maybe with some shoes? It's just this, I was going to say pathetic, but that's too harsh. It's just a sad state of like, this guy was really hoping to get probably a commission off of this or a sale. It's not a busy place. And so later when it's kind of played as comical, like that comical tension of Man-Soo pretends to have his car broken down on the side of the road on the way back from this shoe store. Shoe store guy parks his car to go help him and quickly realizes that he's in trouble. And Man-Soo is holding the gun up to him, but he's got like a paper or his hand or something up over the guy's face, and the camera is following it because he doesn't want to look him in the eye. It's meant to play as really black comedy, I think, but it's also very sad. And
well, I think to your point, and kudos for bringing up Blake Snyder, it's Man-Soo's Dark Night of the Soul, and it may be part A and part B, because I think part A is showing that this man is very much a victim. He's lost a lot. He's basically dependent on a commission of shoes to maybe put food on the table or make his rent or whatever it is. And then he doesn't get that. And it's a very sad moment. And then that's followed immediately by Man-Soo, sort of going through this deploying, very quick and not very elaborate decision to just kill him. And yes, they have the hand going up and down, which is very clever, but I think it's showing it's always difficult to kill, which is Hitchcockian. But also it's like, this is how low he's come, that, he's doing this and it's not even a person. He's trying to just spare his own sort of eyes of having to do it, not even thinking about, well, I'm killing another person just for my sake, and he's got a bad life too. And it's very, very sad. And again, the very dark part of this dark comedy.
Well, one thing, sorry, before you go on, I wanted to finish my point because I kind of lost it when I was.
Apologies.
No, I was getting caught up in the scene and I was thinking about the gun, how clever that was. So I forgot to make my actual point.
Oh, okay.
About morality is at the end of the film, when this family gets away with this murder, the fact that shoe store salesman guy was the most innocent out of all of them, I think normally that would have bothered me. And I can't quite figure out why I'm sort of okay with them getting away scot-free. I mean, we don't know much about his story, so he could have had a wife and kids back at home, but because there's not much emphasis put on it, I feel like the filmmakers are trying to tell us, no, this is just, he's a single guy, kind of no one's going to miss him kind of thing. He's a shoe salesman, so what's the big deal? Which itself is kind of a horrifying, cosmic moral judgment to make on someone. But there's something about the way this story wraps up and the fact that I think all the characters have learned lessons from everything they've been through. So it's not like, spoiler alert, Man-Soo gets a job at the end. It's not quite the job he expected or wanted, but it's going to put his family back on something approaching easy street. And it's not like, okay, great, we went through all that, now we can get back to living like pigs. They go through some stuff, and it's almost like the penance, those bodies under their garden are going to be the reminder of what they sacrificed and what they need to continue to sacrifice in order to make good in the world.
Well, I think you're right about that. I think that's a moral reminder of their shortcomings, and it's something that they'll be reminded of because it's right in their own backyard. I also literally, I also think that like some of the better dark comedies that have been done, and I'm thinking, I was forced to think of some of the dark comedies that happened 20, 30 years ago where people did get away with it, but in much more, wow, they really got away with it kind of ways, like the studio head who gets away with murder in The Player, and he even gets the girl at the end, and he's coming home to this great life, and Tim Robbins doesn't seem to be that worse for the wear for it, or other places where somehow the things have all kind of lined up too in certain stories. But That's not the case here, and it hasn't been as of late. I mean, one film that this reminded me a little bit of, and it's not just because of the Asian major characters in it, but Parasite ends with the son and the mother kind of not having to do the full jail time for their situation. And we even see the son who seems to go back to school and talks about that someday he's going to buy the house and be able to save the father, who's still probably in the basement. But even the fact that the father's in the basement, how hollow is their victory even if they don't go to jail? Yeah, they avoided one trap, but their life is a trap. Here, I think the ending, which is so funny, is the only clear victor who kind of goes on to not ever have to worry is the paper company from America. Mansu gets the one job. He's the one guy in the big warehouse where everything is automated now, and even taking down the trees in the forest aren't done by lumberjacks anymore. They're done by these vicious clawing machines, and it's all going that way. And
they look like Michael Bay Transformers. It's
exactly
crazy. Yeah.
They become almost like the Terminator, where they're kind of just these vicious robots taking these poor nature twigs down. But he lives to become, okay, I can preserve my lifestyle, I can preserve my family, my dogs come back, we're hunky-dory. But I think you're left with the question, well, how long? Like maybe pretty soon, in another year, maybe two, that job will be replaced by some automated sort of foreman as well, which is now, that's the other thing, is he's demoted almost to sort of this, nighttime foreman, just sort of going through, the empty warehouse, just checking on the progress of the papers, not a soul around. It's very lonely. It's kind of scary. I think he's got his job. But I think in some respects, your moral or ethical dilemma is saved from full Monty, because it's not like he's totally out of the woods or totally happy. It's a dream that's been compromised, and he's skated by the skin of his teeth of the worst scenario, but it's not a great scenario in a lot of respects.
Right, and there's a couple of things I want to touch on there, because I think that they're great points. The idea of, well, let's kind of rewind the tape a bit. He does get a job back at, I can't remember if it was, I don't know if it was an old company or one of the rival companies, but first of all, it's fascinating because there's a 5-minute kind of stretch at the end. It kind of reminded me of Begonia in a way, like this really powerful 5 minutes that kind of come out of left field.
Yes.
And give
it's
you
like the last, so much in the last minutes. It's shocking that much narrative is like when usually stories just wind down there,
Right. And just this 5-minute kind of vignette of these amazing visuals inside this paper factory. You kind of wonder how the sausage is made in terms of, because they make all different kinds of paper, from like books to tampons to whatever. Right. And you see these giant, almost like building size white spools of paper with a gigantic barcode across it. It looks like a freeway sign or something. I don't know. But I would say, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I got to get back on track. No, I would say that in that moment, you're right. He kind of fought in the beginning of the film to, make a show of preserving the humanity of his coworkers. And at the end, when he's being interviewed for this job, he is asked, well, we've got this lights out facility, because this is more than a year since he was employed. So, things have kind of changed, and especially with the rapid advancements of AI and other kind of technology, things are going to continue to change. But the interview board says, basically, you're going to be one guy supervising, basically caretaking an automated factory. It's a lights out factory, I think they call it, or something like that, where they keep the lights off most of the time because machines don't need lights in order to work.
Right.
See.
Right.
And so when he goes, when he gets onto the floor there, he does this kind of like a celebratory, it's almost like Laura Linney in Love Actually, when she's doing the dance in the stairwell.
She's gonna get to kiss her coworker finally. Yeah.
Right.
Overnight.
but to your point, Mansu's job is very tentative. So he's kind of savoring the fact that he's working again. He did have to compromise a bit and kind of lie and say, well, yeah, I don't care that there are no people around me, because basically the subtext is, I just want to work. But his wife, Miri, when he comes home and he's talking about like all the great times they're going to have, he says, and you can take up tennis lessons again, honey. And she says, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. there's subtext there. I think that's something that she's learned, that even though it's kind of, she enjoyed it, it's kind of a frivolous thing that's probably very expensive. But also, we need to build up our nest egg, because who knows when you're going to be next out the door, because hey, they don't even need people to supervise the automated machines anymore. So again, this movie works on so many different levels. I said it demands a rewatch. It might even demand two, which is heavy to ask of 2.5 hour movie, but it's so full that, again, there are certain movies that are being adored and looked at, that movies like this are being practically overlooked in all categories and considerations. Just makes me puzzled and more than a bit angry.
Well, it's true. This one's very rich. In fact, I think the greatest reward that the family has in it is that while she gives up the tennis lessons and maybe they give up some other frivolities that they don't need, even the dogs they have to give up for a while, and that's a big part of their family. But it's not like they take it to the shelter or give it up to another family. They give it up to her in-laws, which is helpful. Like they're thinking this through, and they're realizing what they can do, and they have some actions that are acceptable. But one of the things is that they preserve the talent of the girl. They get her the better lessons. Like that's where they're worth investing, because she plays in this very long sequence, and the mother just sits and is like, oh my God, she's just incredible. And she's sort of literally and figuratively floored by her talent. So they've made that.
I think to that point, Jeff, I don't know if she's autistic. She's mute pretty much.
I think she's on the spectrum, as the cliche covers a lot of ground these days. But yeah, she's unusual, and she's not relating to them in normal ways that a kid just kind of relates to mom and dad. She's a little off in her own world as a genius talent, as well as I think a moody kid.
And it kind of, there's one moment where that plays for a comedic, like it's a laugh line, because the gimmick of this character, if you want to call it that, is she doesn't really talk, but when she does talk, she only repeats things that she's heard other people say. And earlier on, they're in the garden, and there's some talk about insects eating something, like the insects are devouring the thing in the ground. And then later on, when she's in the garden and Han-Soo sees that she's near where he had buried the body, she says, the insects are eating it eating it in the ground. It's fun, but I think that the key moment where Miri sees her daughter playing the cello is so impactful is because they make a big point throughout the movie of saying, she's a prodigy at this instrument, but they've never been able to see her do it because the daughter will not play for the family. She only plays for the teacher and for, I guess, performances and things. So when she's in her room playing and the mom comes in and the dogs are there watching everything, the mom just like sits down on the floor because she's literally floored, because I don't think she's ever been able to appreciate what everyone else sees in her daughter.
And the fact that that's kind of a step forward too. Like now suddenly that relationship has changed, maybe because the girl on some levels has realized that, hey, we had to give the dogs for a while who you could relate to. And, mom and dad are here trying to help you, and they kept you in lessons. So maybe it's like, I'll allow you to see me, watch me play. I mean, it begs those kind of questions that you watch, because it works on more than just, the mom is floored and she gets to finally listen to her where she didn't before. It's like, and maybe there's some shifting of dynamics about the way the daughter goes. She actually looks at her at one point under her eyes, and she doesn't have an aghast expression or whatever. The other thing too that I think is wonderful about this movie and Begonia is they set you up for all this stuff, and you think, oh my God, they're coming so close to this terrible stuff and it getting bad, and some terrible, terrible things happen, and some death and stuff like that. And yet this laughter of like, well, this comes true. In Begonia, it's like, those conspiracy theories with the tinfoil hats, they're absolutely right. They don't live it to the end of the reel. But in fact, nobody does, to run spoiler warnings. But damn, they were correct, even though they were Looney Tunes and way out of their depths. In here, Mansu, you just think he's going to get caught. He's not going to get away with it. He's so bad and so fraught. And yet somehow he manages through the luck of a number of circumstances that come his way. But at the same time, what I love about the movie's take on it all is, he's in this job that he's very happy to have because it allows him to have his family intact and his house and everything else. But it's not a great job, and it's intimidating, and he may not have it for long. The other thing I mentioned to you as we walked out of the theater yesterday is I love it when even the last shots are like there to make us think and go, isn't that interesting? As the credits start to roll and they show the actors' names and stuff, in between, they show shots of all the ways that paper are still a very big part of our life. And everybody was saying back in the day when newspapers and magazines were going down, all that, well, it's all digital now. We won't be reading books anymore. It's all going to be on the Kindles and all that stuff. It's like, no, paper will still inform everything from napkins to outdoor signage to signs in whatever and 100 other places. And all kinds of textures, all kinds of sizes. Some is colored paper for the birthday. Some is fancy paper for a invite for a wedding or something. But paper will survive. There will be paper, and those companies will make money making paper. There might not be the people left to, sort of use them on certain levels or whatever, but paper is not going away. Maybe mankind will first. It's almost
paper will outlive people.
Paper will outlive people, at least more than it will certainly outlive employees, those employed.
Well, and to your point, it felt almost like a very Marvel, like very MCU, getting kind of cute with the presentation of the end credits, because you're right. They had, the only examples I can really think of are like the colorist. They would have like old-fashioned like color bar diagrams drawn on paper, and the composer with like musical notes written on paper.
Right.
And different textures, different kind of designs and presentations. And I didn't really think about that, I don't think, until you brought it up to me. And again, I feel like that's sort of the theme of this movie, is there's so much going on all the time that you can unpack. I mean, it works on so many different levels and each of those levels, I think, is extraordinarily strong and well thought out. By the way, I imagine that at some point there's probably going to be an American remake of this movie. I don't know who's going to star in it, but I have a feeling they're going to botch it somehow.
Oh, I know. It's they almost always do. They very, very rarely. I mean, it's an occasional movie like The Birdcage, which comes out and finds its own spin, and you marvel at how clever it is, and casting and everything else. But more often than not, you go like, they shouldn't have done it. It just doesn't work quite as well. I've always sort of blanched when they're going to do that kind of stuff with the remakes, because I don't know if they necessarily translate. Speaking of translation, if you don't mind me just bringing it up, maybe it's something to talk about for a few. But you mentioned the award shows and how they have missed this movie by and large. In defense of the Golden Globes of all crazy award shows, they managed to nominate this one for best comedy. They have, the separation between best drama and best musical or comedy. Best comedy, as well as best international feature, and the lead actor for best actor in a comedy or musical. So at least there's some acknowledgement there, and it's been on top 10 lists and stuff like that. But it's funny because this year, as you and I have been talking over the weeks and sort of coming up with our thoughts on 10 best lists and what deserves to be awarded and et cetera, et cetera. This is one of those years where, despite what SAG did today,
that's what I was thinking when I said I misspoke earlier. I was mostly thinking about SAG,
But it's interesting though, because I think, to your point though, it's I don't want to say it's a backlash or sort of an intentional thing, but it's shocking that they haven't nominated some of the actors who have figured in every other series of either wins or nominations, like Stellan Skarsgård and the two women from I'm blanking on the Sentimental Value, and Wagner Moura from the Secret Agent. That might just be about how many people saw them, and a lot of the SAG voters are old and they're reaching for the DVDs that they get sent, and so maybe those, I'm going to have to read, I'll get to that one later. You never know, and they always pick some unusual choices and they don't quite go along with that. But I was just going to say, in defense of this year and in Critics Awards and most nominations and film nominations and stuff like that, this is the first time since I've been a critic, and maybe since watching the Oscars, which was back when I was in junior high, that I can think of that there is the possibility of 5 truly impossible to predict worthy nominees for international feature, and at least 3 of them, if not 4, I could see easily getting onto the best film list too. And that's, I think, a testament to not only the more globalization of film and maybe the onslaught of the bigger Asian and European membership for the Academy, but they've had some terrific films. I mean, this one, Sentimental Value, The Secret Agent, a few others.
It was just an accident.
It was just an accident, of
yeah.
course. Yeah, and some others that are.
I've heard good things about Surat. I think
Right,
that was
yes,
another
that's supposed to
neon.
be a good one too.
Yeah,
Right,
I got to
that's
check
the
that
neon
out.
one, I think, as well. But I mean, that's incredible that that we have that embarrassment of riches coming from outside of the U.S. Even if SAG didn't seem to get the memo.
And again, I hate to harp on it because I know people love their PTA, and I do too. Up until this year, I look at like all those films that you've named, even though I think there's one out of that batch that I haven't seen. Oh, two, I haven't seen Secret Agent yet either. Those are adult films, not adult films, but films for adults.
Right.
And I put those next to One Battle After Another, along with all the other films that are in the being nominated along with that movie in all the categories. And I say, really, do you belong here?
Well,
and the answer is a resounding no.
No, I mean, and then to that point, I mean, I think, they always ignore worthy people. And more often than not, it seems like the directors category could go to 10 because they've got so many good directors and who will they nominate. And yeah, a lot of great directors are not going to get nominated this year, including this gentleman, because I don't think enough people have seen it. And that's unfortunate. But, this is the way that stuff goes when you're not necessarily dealing with, American voters. And that's the thing that I think is tricky about, the Oscars, at least compared to most critics awards. And that is, critics generally see more than Academy voters do. And I remember the year that there was the big controversy when Crash beat Brokeback Mountain, that there were a number of Academy members who said, well, I'm not going to watch that. That's a gay love story. I mean, literally said that. I mean, I think it was people like Ernest Borgnine and Kirk Douglas famously gave interviews where it's like, really? You've been in the arts world for a long time. Are you that provincial? Maybe so.
Well, but we're talking 20 years ago.
Well, exactly. It's different. It's certainly different now. Yeah, it's certainly different now.
I think the difference is they wouldn't admit to something like that.
Right.
They might feel it, but they're not going to come out and say, I'm not going to watch that gay love story.
Right.
But you're right. They have worked in Hollywood for decades, but also Hollywood decades ago was very different in its attitude. So it's not that surprising. But yeah, I don't know. I'll be interested. Is it the Hollywood Reporter or Variety, one of those around Oscar season, that come out with those articles where they kind of talk to Academy voters, and it's like the blind kind of gossipy things, like who watched what and what they thought.
Weekly that did it, but I think a number of people do it now. But yeah, they talk to a producer and a director and an actor, and they're usually bitchy as hell. Like these people like, I don't know why I feel like that one. I think it's a piece of crap. Oh yeah. But it gives you an insight into how we don't necessarily seem to understand that sometimes even people in the industry, as much as they're artistic, don't see it the way critics do, or things like that. But we'll see. Yeah, I would rather. I'm hoping that people use these nominations, use these kind of critics awards, and if they read any blurbs on the newspaper or the online digital ads for the movies, that it's enough to get them to go see some of these. And when they say, oh, I don't want to read, I mean, I think Netflix has changed a lot of that because they have so much foreign content, and I think you get used to reading. And I know plenty of people who also put on the subtitles so they don't miss a word whether they're watching regular television as well. So I think that's kind of a thing of the past, as well as some of those ideals and attitudes that you just mentioned. But it's really a treasure trove of some terrific foreign language films this year that I hope continue to get attention. And this is one of those ones where, I don't think you're going to see a nomination for director or actor, but the Academy has had bigger surprises than that at times. So we'll see. If it gets on the 10 list of best films, bravo. That's the victory right there.
Yeah, I mean, any attention is good attention, and we should mention that No Other Choice is playing right now in theaters. It's in art house theaters and possibly even some multiplexes. So definitely go check it out. I do want to pull over a second because that subtitle thing has always bothered the crap out of me, because it's a cartoonish argument. Oh, I don't want to read while I watch a movie. I mean, unless I'm going to put this delicately, Unless you are a very slow reader. It's not like they put up the subtitle, the captions
Exactly.
in the speed of like, quarter-second TV commercial edits or something.
Exactly.
You have time to read and to follow the dialogue, and
Yes, you do.
especially if you see it in a theater and you're sitting back far enough, you can read and take in what's going on the screen at the same time. And if you can't, it takes, a couple of movies of reading subtitles to get into it, and then you'll never be the same. There are so many great foreign films, as you mentioned, this year that stand shoulder to shoulder with what's going on, in the US, that I mean, you're really depriving yourself if you just dismiss something as like, oh, I don't want to read at the movies. I hate that argument.
Well, the other thing too is we read text now that passes for communications or dialogue or conversation.
Or even on TikTok and YouTube shorts and all that,
You're
everything's
reading the
captioned now.
titles along with what you're hearing just to make sure you get it all. And if you watch a movie on Amazon Prime, you have the luxury, and a lot of people love it, of seeing the little stuff going alongside that tells
Like
you
the
who
trivia and stuff.
yeah, trivia, who the actors are, et cetera, et cetera. So I think those excuses don't wash anymore. But nonetheless, let's hope that some of the attention. Oh, good.
I was just saying that there's a cartoon here somewhere, a couple of panels of like a couple of bored teenagers sitting on the couch, and the TV's on, but they're both scrolling on their phones. And someone says, "Hey, you want to go see the new Park Chan-wook movie?" And the other one says, "No, I hate reading while I'm watching movies."
Exactly. It's like that somehow a multitask they can't fathom.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, I do want to pull over and read some very colorful and interesting comments we've gotten over the last hour. Now, the great thing is, a lot of these are out of context. So, folks, if you want to play along, just go back and look at the timestamps on these and see what they were referring to in the last hour. I'll have to read the timestamps. It's 8:36 p.m. Gay homosexual. Love that name. I'm also pretty happy with them getting away with it. Lol. Well, there you go. Hamdibunya. Illegals make them. I'm assuming that means paper, but in this context, I don't know what that means because these are Koreans working at a Korean paper factory that's been bought by Americans. So I don't know what you're getting at there. Smiley face from Hamdibunya. Stay in your role, man. Again, out of context. I don't know what this means. This is the best one. An emoji of a slate and the word action. What?
Yeah, it's like he's doing the visual and the subtitle.
Oh, there you go. I'm on my big high seat watching down on you guys. What is that in reference to? I don't know. This is great.
He's making some comments that are perhaps condescending. I don't know. Maybe he's just sitting high. I don't know.
But he's going to redeem himself with the condescension.
Yes.
That's a good point, says Hamdibunya. But again, I don't know what the good point was. We've made several during the last hour, Jeff, so he could be talking about everything.
Yeah. So many good points. It's ridiculous.
All right. Well, any final thoughts as we wrap up here? Jeff York of the Establishing Shot and Pipeline Artists. I forgot to introduce you at the beginning of the show.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right. No, this is a great movie to talk about. I'm glad we got to do it in sort of an immediate time right after we saw it, and it's still in the theaters and in the awards conversation. So we'll see. The Golden Globes are this Sunday, so it has a chance of winning 3 awards. So we'll see. And just the fact that they're going to say these names and these shows, and the actor I'm sure will be there from South Korea, so that's exciting. And hopefully he's meeting some people who can say, we're going to put you in a movie, but I hope it isn't like, will you be the special advisor on it as we make an American remake? Hopefully they won't say that.
No, Tom Cruise will probably come up to him and say, "I want you in the next Mission Impossible. We're going to relaunch
you're going to play
series."
The villain. You need to use foreign actors to play villains. By the way, I will tell you, one of my favorite foreign language films of all time was Tony Erdmann from a number of years ago. I don't know if you've ever seen that. And for a while there, it was very popular. A lot of people thought it was going to win Best Foreign Language Film that year, now known as Best International Feature. But there was talk of doing an American remake of it with Kristen Wiig and Jack Nicholson, and nothing came of it. I'm so glad it didn't, because leave it alone. Watch the original movie. It has its own rhythm, its own feeling, and it being odd and from another country, it makes it all the more marvelous, because it's like it's done in its right place. It's done in the right context of that civilization, all that. Sure, there's human empathy across the board, no matter what the country is, but a lot of these things succeed and exist so well because this is so much about the pride of Mansu and his inability to accept that he has to condescend and do something or drop down some rungs in the ladder and do something else. But it's great in its original form, and that's where it should be seen.
I agree. And I know we're wrapping up, but there's something I forgot to mention I want to drive home. The first victim, before that whole scene in the house with the struggle for the gun and all that stuff, where it gets very kind of Tarantino-ish almost, there's a first attempt to kill the husband in the woods, but he's gone out there with his wife for a picnic.
Right.
And in that picnic, she's saying, look, you've been out of work. You get the feeling that he is older, possibly even considerably older than Mansu.
Yes.
And he's been out of work for a while. He's kind of going around the bend, and he's stuck on, like, he had won awards at his previous job, and he was, had a very storied career, it sounds like, and he just can't find anything. And his wife is like, look, my dad can set you up managing one of his cafes, or maybe even being a franchisee. I'm not exactly sure. He's like, I'm not going to do that. Later on in the scene where Mansu has a gun pointed on this guy and the wife is coming up behind him, to batter this person who's broken into their home with the giant paper award, is very kind of visually funny.
Yeah.
At one point, the husband and the wife start arguing in front of him, and she screams, it's not that you lost your job, it's how you choose to react to it. And that just said so much about his dysfunction as a husband, as a man, his kind of shame and his pride and like not wanting to lower himself. I'm not going to go work at a cafe when I've got 30 plus years of being a manager and at a well-paying job. You think you do anything to survive and provide for your family, and most people would, but no one really takes into account what that takes in terms of like knocking yourself down several pegs in terms of pride. And can you look at your wife in the eye, and what does that do to your relationship? And might it drive her into the arms of a young, guy who's going to sleep with her while you're out maybe looking for work? And the other part that I think was so soul crushing is there's a scene later where Mansu goes to the house and he's kind of casing the joint, and he sees that the wife is having an affair with some young 20-something guy. He leaves the house. The husband comes home early, and so that Mansu can, I'm not sure exactly what provoked him to do it, but he didn't want the husband to find out about the affair. He didn't want that guy to suffer that indignity. So he calls him on the cell phone and says, yeah, I'm from this company that you interviewed for a couple weeks ago. We want to offer you the position, but you need to talk to our CEO or this other manager. And he's leaving town at like 5 o'clock. We need you to get across town.
I know.
Right. But he's like, you have to leave right now. And so the guy's like getting ready to leave. And there's this whole like bit later where he's like, oh, wait, I've got to go inside to get my suit or whatever. But in that moment, you see how hard this is for Mansu to make that call, because it's a distraction. It's an effective distraction, but he also realizes he's messing with this one guy's lifeline. Like, oh my God, I finally am going to be able to work again. Yeah. And you see the reaction of the guy, like, oh yeah, I'll drop everything to go for this opportunity. It's going to change everything. And it's like having a lottery ticket ripped up in front of you after you find out that you've won the numbers.
Very true. Very true. That's why this has, I think a lot of times the great comedies have a real drama to them, a real seriousness. And this is one of them. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can speak, unfortunately, from personal experience that No Other Choice is the most accurate movie about unemployment that I've seen. Possibly not in terms of the extremes some people go to find work, but definitely in terms of the emotional honesty. And it's also very entertaining, extremely well acted. And as you mentioned, Jeff, a couple of times here, lest we not forget, incredibly well shot. So it's the complete package. Full recommendation from here at Kicking the Seat. So, Jeff, next week, we're going to be back on Tuesday the 13th, talking about Another film about a guy who's down his luck and decides to try a new career. That is This Thing On with Will Arnett. I've not seen the movie yet. I've seen some trailers and some interviews. Very excited, very intrigued. And yeah, we'll be back talking about that at Tuesday the 13th at 8 p.m. Central. So hope you'll join us. Jeff, maybe you or some of Earth's other Earth's Mightiest Critics, but I'm mostly talking to the audience. Please join us back here for that. And yeah, until then, I ask that you support all of Earth's Mightiest Critics, and especially and including Mr. Jeff York of the Establishing Shot and Pipeline Artists. And yeah, watch the Golden Globes. I'm sure we'll be complaining about that next Tuesday as well, however that shakes out. But yeah, thank you for watching this. If you like this live stream, please like, subscribe, and all that business. And until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thank you very much and take care.